Alright, so we're going to try this again. We're going to actually go on a day shooting today. As you can probably tell, the weather is far nicer than last time, and I've actually checked the forecast this time as well. It's supposed to be a nice day. But also, we're starting the day to that sunrise. It is absolutely gorgeous living where I do. Here we are then at last, all set up. I'm in one of the hides. Whilst it is a lovely sunny day, there is a bitterly cold wind, and if I'm honest, within a few minutes of getting here, my hands were frozen, and it's difficult to enjoy shooting when it's like that. So I've come into one of the hands, keep me out of the wind, one of the hides rather, to keep me out of the wind, and yeah, we're hopefully going to have a decent day shooting.
But of course, it's just never that simple, is it?
God, it's a fucking barn door today.
Now, the reason why I couldn't hit a barn door at this point, although I hadn't quite realised it just yet, wasn't the wind, and it wasn't entirely me either, being so far out of practice. For whatever reason, the zero on the rifle was way off, as in more than it should have been, especially considering I hadn't actually used it for about 6 months. So you'll hear me talking about that in a minute. I did eventually get it zeroed in about as much as you could on a breezy day, but yeah, all in all, it led to a pretty frustrating day shooting, did that.
Long last. Fucking hell, I'm out of practice.
I'll admit that, but that wasn't the only problem.
That is really quite frustrating. There's a spinner exactly on my zero range. Hit it spot on, it didn't spin, I think it might be bust. So, never mind. Let's try it again, see if it'll move. Fucking missed it. think what I've done by coming in here, whilst it is nice and warm and I'm out of the wind, is now it's harder to tell just how much the wind is blowing. There's a few leaves blowing around, but I was hitting stuff outside. Now I can't seem to hit the cow's arse.
So at this point I'm talking about the wind a fair bit. I hadn't realised yet just how far off the zero was on it, and that's why I was having such a bad time hitting anything. To be fair, I had no real reason to suspect it would be off, at least not by as much as it was. As you'll find out later, it was between 2 and 3 mil dots up and to the left, which is a hell of a long way to be off. And it was perfect when I put the gun away. Granted, that was about 6 months ago, but it hasn't moved since it's been in storage, so I had no real reason at this point to suspect that it was as far off as it was. Truth be told, this gun, you generally don't have to worry about wind that much unless it's really blowing. I use RWS Superdome pellets in it. It's a 2.2 and they're 14.5 grain. They're quite hefty pellets and they're not really affected by wind that much. Maybe a little bit if it's gusting quite a lot, but not really. So, apologies, but at this point I keep going on about the wind. Eventually, as you'll see later, I do realise just how far off the zero is and start taking steps to correct that.
Dislodged it. It's now rotated the right way up. I actually saw the pellet that time. It sailed right over the top of it.
So there, you just saw me, I was looking through the scope, and then I just moved back, looked away, took a breath, and then went back to looking through the scope and took the shots. You do that when you've got the shakes, or you just, for whatever reason, just can't seem to get your aim on. Sometimes if you just relax, have a breath, and then do it again, you will hit the target, and it's the right thing to do. And it will work for you. At least when the gun's zeroed correctly, which it wasn't here. But it is still the right thing to do. Just take a breath and try again. As you've probably heard, there's a sigh of frustration creeping in there. Unfortunately, when you're having a bad day shooting, it is very easy for you to start getting frustrated, and unfortunately it in no way helps. You start rushing things, you start just wanting to get from shot to shot, you're determined to hit it, and as you'll see, I take 4 more shots and then decide to have a break, because things just aren't going to get any better once you get into that mindset.
That's ridiculous. So this gun is, last time I had it out, was perfectly zeroed to 25 yards. Now I'm shooting over that same distance and I'm having to use 2 whole mil dots of hold under to hit the target.
Thinking back, it was actually 30 yards,
that
but
much.
that still doesn't account for just how
It's just
far
me.
off it had gone.
Let's do the same again to see what happens. Oh, there it is again. Well, if it does it a third time, I think it's safe to say that the zero has shifted by a lot. Which is frustrating given that it's basically been sat on its stand all this time, hasn't been used. I wouldn't withstand it if I'd been using it all that time. Oh, that bit of time I missed by a mile. I think it's just me. Time for a break.
And now for your viewing pleasure, a slow motion Springer shot. Or rather a slow motion Springer miss. So after that first bit of footage, I finally came to the realisation that it was the zero on the gun that was off, way off, and it wasn't so much the wind or myself that was making me miss. Well, at least it wasn't entirely me and my fault that was making me miss. So I spent some time re-zeroing the gun, making some pretty big adjustments to the scope to get it back how it's supposed to be. And then in this next clip, you'll hear me talking about how I finally realised and corrected it. And as you'll see and hear, I made a lot more successful shots. I mean, it still wasn't the most successful shooting day, but things did seem to pick up from here, at least for a while anyway.
So, as it turns out, the zero was off. Way off. 2 mil dots to the left and 2 mil dots too high. Now, it was zeroed perfectly. When I put it away, I've never heard of a gun losing its zero without being used, but that's what has happened. It seems to be pretty much spot on now after a lot of tinkering and fiddling. Better. See if we can hit something metal and make a bit of noise. I wish I had something with a proper zoom lens, because that sent that little pigeon-shaped spinner. Got a spinner. There we go. Yeah, spot on again. Still a little to the left, but still a little bit of a breeze, so I'm not going to go for really precise zeroing. There's just no point.
And then another slow motion shot. This time you actually hear it hit something. You see, it does happen sometimes. just poking my head around the fourth wall here, I'm really thinking at this point of just turning all the raw footage from this shooting day into a big long ASMR video. I think I've got enough, and it's actually really quite relaxing watching this. You know what, I am going to do that. I think I'll call it ASMR for the discerning airgun shooter. But for now, I'm just going to sort of speed through this and we can move on to the next bit. So as you can tell, I cut down that last bit of footage by a fair bit actually. There was just over 20 minutes worth of footage that I've cut down to just a couple. And towards the end of it, I started to miss more and more and was getting increasingly frustrated. So from here on, I'd put the Cometer Phoenix away. As I said earlier, it's important to take breaks, especially when you start missing and start getting frustrated, because it's never going to pick up until you do take a break. But I decided to change gun and try out one or two of the other ones that I'd brought with me. Starting, in this case, with my other Cometer rifle, the Cometer Model 5.
Alright, time for something a bit different. Getting a bit frustrated with the Cometer Phoenix. Nothing wrong with it, it's perfectly accurate. Just sort of found out practice. I'm getting annoyed with it, so I can't hit a barn door. Time to try out some of the antiques. Cometer Model 5. Now, no safety on this gun. Be extra careful. Single stage trigger. Very old, simple design as well. Literally just a hook on the back of the pistol. Won't use much power, so it's able to something a bit closer, shall we?
And as you can see, I went on missing. As it turned out, the zero on this gun was off in almost the exact same way as the Cometer Phoenix. The point of impact was up and to the left by between 2 and 3 mil dots in each direction. Never seen anything like it before. And by that I mean two completely different guns. The Phoenix and the Mod 5 there's several decades separating them, and whilst they're both brick barrel Springers, the designs couldn't really be more different, and yet they were both off by pretty much the exact same way, and off by a lot after 6 months of basically not being used at all. In case you're wondering, I'm aiming for another metal spinner target, this one at about the 15-yard mark. So when I eventually hit it, you'll hear the classic metallic ding. Unfortunately, that does take a while in this case. You'll notice as well here that after each shot I'm just taking a little longer than I normally do to keep looking through the scope. What I'm doing is I'm watching where the pellet is landing compared to where I was aiming for it, and just making a mental note and building up a picture of just where it's going each and every time. I was realising much faster than I did with the Phoenix that the zero was off on this gun as well by this point. And also begin to get a bit puzzled as to how it can be off by so much, and in almost the exact same way as the Phoenix as well. And there you go, missed every single one. It was quite obvious to me by this point that it was time for yet more zeroing on this gun as well.
Alright, so Commodore Model 5 finally zeroed in somewhat. I mean, it's an antique, is this thing. It was a junior rifle to begin with, so I'm not going for pinpoint accuracy at great range. Just one of the little flip-up spinners that you can see at 25 yards there. But it seems to be hitting them pretty consistently. Partway through, the left and right knob fell off. Just fell on the floor. You can still adjust it, but if you tip it over, it will just drop off. So yeah, great. It was a free scope anyway. It's an old thing, only 4 times the magnification. Let's see if we can get a few more hits on something with it before we put it away. This is when I just cock it up and miss and have to re-zero. Of course.
So although you can hear me actually hitting the target with that metallic ding that we're looking for, being a 177 and a junior rifle, it doesn't actually have the power to make the spinner spin over. So I'm hitting it, but not actually doing very much. So at this point I'd decided I'd had enough of serious and semi-serious rifle shooting, and decided to go and have a bit of fun, make a bit of noise with some of my blowback pistols that I'd brought with me. Now I was going to leave this part out, but I've decided to put it in just because it will then show the complete day. But this was actually the final disappointment. I tried 2 of my CO2 powered blowback pistols, the Remington 1911 that you're about to see, and then a little bit later I had the Gamo P25 out. Unfortunately, owing to the bitter cold on the day, being CO2 powered, they were so lackluster that it just sapped out the usual fun that you get from these guns. They normally go off with a proper crack, they have decent power for what they are, and with the blowback action working in that way you get a nice bit of a kick to it, and they're great fun to shoot. In this case though, it just dumbed them down. They were so lackluster that there was so little fun to be had. So I just finished off what I could get out of the CO2 capsule and then went home after this. And then there was just a little bit more added to the day's disappointment. Not only was the kid to my left, that you can see in the background, getting far more successful shots than I was, but the 1911 then decided to jam up on me. It had managed to feed 2 BBs forward when I'd released the slide on it, I suspect this was my fault. Well, I don't suspect, I know it was my fault. I didn't seat the last BB properly in the magazine before putting it in the gun. This then meant that that top BB was loose, and as soon as the magazine clicked into place, it will have fallen forwards into the breech. But then when the slide has come forward, it's tried to feed the next BB in behind it, and that then just jams it up. You just get two of them stacked on top of each other, and it can't push them both all the way forwards, and then it just will not shoot. So it's a fairly simple thing to fix. You just get a cleaning rod and push them out the other way. Sometimes they can get really jammed in there, so you've got to give them a good shove. It's fairly simple to fix. It actually, interestingly, used to happen a lot when I first got that gun. So I was given some Remington BBs to go with it. I was thinking, well, it's a Remington guns, we'll have Remington ammunition. Shouldn't be an issue. Turns out it was. They were double feeding almost every other shot, and sometimes more. And I almost took the gun back, thinking it was just crap. I noticed eventually that it didn't take much to push them out of the little clip at the top of the magazine. In fact, if you just shook it, you would get them just dropping out. So I ordered some different BBs. These are some Umarex ones off eBay. And the size difference, even though they both say 5.5mm on the packet, the size difference you can just see with the naked eye. And the silver ones I'm using here, the Umarex ones, work perfectly. This is the first time I've actually had a double feed, and like I say, it was actually my fault for not loading the magazine correctly. Right. So yeah, a little bit of knowledge there. Remington gun, you'd have thought Remington ammunition. No. Unfortunately, I try not to slag off products from various manufacturers on that, as so many people are keen to do. But in this case, pretty poor show from Remington on their BBs. They are just the wrong size, and it causes issues, unfortunately. Now, as you saw just there, that very first shot with a brand new CO2 capsule was about as close as this gun got to its normal functioning. You can see there's a little bit of a vapour from the discharging CO2, and there's a bit of a kick, but nowhere near what it normally is when on, say, a nice summer's day. And it didn't improve from there, obviously, and if I'm honest, it left me with this similar feeling to the 1911. A bit disappointed. Not the gun's fault at all. I still think they're both great guns. I've got quite a few CO2 pistols now. I just think they're great fun to shoot, but unfortunately the weather just wasn't on my side this time. And now we're really beginning to see on the P25, on this second magazine of pellets, it's really muted down, and you can actually see, especially if you know the P25, if you own one or if you've shot one before, it's not performing anywhere near as well as it should. And one thing that this gun will start doing when it starts to run low on gas pressure is when it can't push the slide back far enough, it isn't able to then cock the hammer that's on the back of the gun. That doesn't stop you shooting it initially because the trigger is double action as well as single action, but it is a sign that the gas is about to run out and you've got maybe a magazine's worth of ammunition left, probably more like half of one. And the fact that it started doing this after only 2 loads of the magazines shows just how much of an effect the cold weather was having. Normally I get 4 or more, and it's 16 shots to a magazine. I actually almost forgot about this last gun. It serves me right for not reviewing my own footage properly. I had one go before I went home with my Diana Model 16 gun I brought with me. Now this is, for lack of a better term, a kid's gun. It's quite small, it's extremely low on power, it's the lowest power gun I own, and it's not really good for anything other than knocking over empty Coke cans at very short range. The pellet will rarely even pierce the empty Coke can, or it might only pierce one side of it and then get stuck inside if you're lucky. It will knock it over though, but that's about all it's good for. It is actually though a very pretty gun to look at, so I'm quite glad I got it. I didn't pay very much for it, so I always like to have a little bit of a go with the old Diana.
Alright, so that's the day pretty much done with. Okay day, it was nice to be out and see people again, nice to socialise, well, nice to be shooting as well. I have to say though, not the best day I've ever had. Wasn't shooting very well. For some reason I had 3 guns, the scopes were off by the exact same amount. It was literally 4 mil dots up and to the left on all 3. Don't know how that's happened, but yeah, I had to re-zero them all before they were even close to going in the right direction. And then when I finally got on there, it just wasn't enjoyable to shoot them. So damn cold and windy. Half of the people that have come have gone after an hour or so. Yeah, nobody's enjoying it. All you can think about is keeping warm. But I'm glad I got out. Hopefully as things start to warm up, it's February right now. Hopefully as things start to warm up as we go into spring, I'll have some more enjoyable days, but for now I'm going home and I want some hot food in me. And yeah, to have some feeling in my fingers would be nice as well. So yeah, we'll call that it for first ever filmed shooting day. Would have been nice to get some more filming done, but there were a few people here that weren't too keen on being filmed. I wasn't filming them. But you know, they were potentially in the shot, and they were starting to get a bit worked up on that. Nobody said anything, but they were, you could hear them talking, saying, "What's he doing? Is he filming us?" Yeah, didn't get that much filming done. Most of it, as you'll see, or as you've just seen, was in one of the hides. I did manage to get a bit done outside after most people had left. But by then the day was pretty much over and I wasn't really enjoying it. Also, all my CO2 guns aren't working properly, it's just too damn cold for them. They are very temperature sensitive and it's so freaking cold that they don't work properly. So yeah, that's it for now. Hopefully some better videos to come, some more enjoyable ones to watch. But as always, I just document these things. I do stuff and I film it. Oh, and one more thing. I've just stopped, as I do a fair bit actually, at the BP Blondis petrol station on the A148 coming back from Holt, where the shooting range is. I normally get a coffee there, partly because it's really nice. Now all it is one of those normal Costa Express machines, as you can see. But I don't know what they're putting in it, but it is really nice. It's nicer than the normal express machines that you get in petrol stations. I don't know if they're putting different beans in it, if they're, I don't know, extra fresh for some reason, or if they're just, I don't know, putting a sprinkling of crack in it. I don't know. But the coffee is really nice. I don't know why, but I tend to stop here most times I come out this way. So yeah, if you pass in and you want one, petrol station's the way to go on this occasion.